Ah, Yu-Gi-Oh! The wildly successful manga series by Kazuki Takahashi, rest in peace, and later successful anime adaptations being the 1998 Toei anime and the much more well-known Duel Monsters anime. It was just known as Yu-Gi-Oh! In the West. While Yu-Gi-Oh! Is the focus of this video, it's not about the original series. It's about Yu-Gi-Oh! 5D's. 5D's is the anime sequel to Yu-Gi-Oh! GX, which was an anime about a duel academy, which I won't focus on today, as 5D's is very self-contained. After GX wrapped up in 2008, it was time for a new series, which is a wild ride to say the least. Starting in April 2008, the first episode of Yu-Gi-Oh! 5D's aired. I can't believe I'm gonna say this, but who knew a show about card games on motorcycles would be so good? Let's just say from here on, the premises of these Yu-Gi-Oh! Animes are kinda ridiculous, but I love it.
Makes me feel alive.
Whoa. We are not reviewing the dub. We are reviewing the sub in this review. There are actual legitimate reasons as to why I'm reviewing the sub, and I will get to them as I get to them. But this is not a dub review. In my honest opinion, 4Kids butchered this show. Yeah, that's not surprising, but I wanted to mention it in case anyone asks. Anyway, on to the review proper. "5D starts in a Coliseum sort of area in a futuristic city known as Neo Domino City. If you know your Yu-Gi-Oh, you may remember Domino City, which is the predominant location of the Battle City arc of the original manga and Duel Monsters anime. Duelists in the 5D's world ride on motorcycles known as D-Wheels. Here, we're introduced to Jack Atlas, the man, the myth, the legend, better known as the King. He's never lost a duel before, but the point of this is it quickly gets the audience familiar with 5D's world by showcasing the new style of dueling called a riding duel. Yes, these are the motorcycle duels in question. We then cut to Satellite, a very crappy looking city on an isolated island near Neo Domino City that we'll get to know quite well throughout the show. Starting the anime in Neo Domino City was such a smart choice, because it contrasts the very nice, clean, futuristic looking city with this comparatively dumpy looking place. Think Rogueport from Thousand Year Door. This is when our main character Yusei Fudo appears, and he's settled with his friends who are watching the duel Jack was just in earlier. Yusei's tinkering with his D-Wheel as he's planning to escape Satellite for reasons we'll get to a bit later. To help with the escape, Raleigh gets Yusei a ship to enhance his D-Wheel, and security does not like that. Raleigh stole it from some facility. Security knew he did it since Raleigh has a criminal marker, a yellow tattoo of sorts that marks anyone who commits a crime. Something Japan actually used to do, by the way. Yusei now has to deal with security to get them off their backs because they'll get arrested otherwise. Yusei duels Officer Ushio under the condition that he'd let him go under the condition that Yusei wins, and if Yusei loses, they'd all get arrested. During the duel, Ushio, yes, this is a reference to Ushio from the original Yu-Gi-Oh! Manga and later 1998 Toei anime, he berates him as Satellite scum get used to this. And while the duel is a standard first duel to get the audience acquainted with the new mechanics, Yusei shows off Synchro Summoning, which is new to 5D's with his monster.
Shining Gundam!
I mean Junk Warrior. Yusei wins the duel and gets security off their backs, ending the first episode on a fantastic note as Yusei looks off the Neo Domino City. What an amazing first episode! It does everything I wanted in a first episode. It shows off the world, it shows off our characters, it shows off their motivations. This is how you do a hook. It gives you the Yu-Gi-Oh! Action that you've wanted if you're familiar with Yu-Gi-Oh! But it sets up the story super well for what's to come. The next 4 or so episodes I'll bunch together since they all contribute to the same plot thread, and if I were to break down every episode individually, we'd be here for hours. The next episode starts with a flashback 2 years ago before the show, actually, where Jack beats Yusei in a duel, mocking him that he could ever beat the king, and tells Yusei that he can't win if he only uses monsters. Only a balance of monsters, magic, and trap cards can win. Back in the present, Jack looks at Stardust Dragon, reminiscing on past memories of Sato and how he used to live in that dump. Rex Godwin, the head of the Public Security Maintenance Bureau, walks in and tells him to forget about Satellite. He tells Jack and the audience that Satellite's sole purpose in existing is to dispose of and recycle Neo Domino's trash. Yeah, the world of 5D's is classist, where Neo Domino thrives while Satellite people are treated as literal scum, and we'll see more examples of that later. As I said earlier, Yusei plans to escape Satellite. He's planning on doing this by going through a maintenance tunnel that does, well, monthly maintenance. The reason he wants to escape is he wants his card back, the Stardust Dragon card Jack has in fact. And Ushio duels him once again since Satellite scum aren't allowed to leave, so they duel him by the skin of his teeth. Yusei wins the duel and escapes Satellite into Neo Domino City. Episode 4 opens on a scene I really like between Jack and Yusei. Yusei confronts Jack about his card and stolen D-Wheel. Jack replies he has no need for that D-Wheel anymore now that he's the king. The anger in Yusei's voice and the fist clench and the music in this scene really sells the scene. You can tell Yusei is not happy about what Jack did. Despite Jack getting his card back, Yusei throws it right back to him and wants his card back fair and square through dueling. Jack then takes him to the stadium from the first episode to duel him. Since I mentioned the music in that scene a moment ago, I wanted to highlight the Japanese soundtrack because it's genuinely amazing. Such a wide range of pieces that perfectly convey the action on screen, as well as having more reserved pieces for the emotional moments, which there are plenty of, don't worry. So, let's listen. Oh boy. Before we get back to the plot, I want to mention the first of many dub changes I despise. It's regarding Jack Atlas's character, and it will have ramifications later in the show. His character is all wrong in the dub. His dub voice does not fit him, in my opinion. They turned his Giga Chad Japanese voice into this fake British Australian accent that makes him come off as cartoonishly evil more so than a flawed, prideful man. The dub treats him like this comical supervillain, which lines up with his goofy voice, who hates Satellite and thinks Yusei is inferior, when that wasn't the case at all in the Japanese original. In the dub, he actively brags about how he double-crossed his friends, even though in the original, he regrets doing that. He made a choice he regretted, and he has to live with that. He hates Satellite not because of the people, but what it represents to him. In short, the dub turns Jack Atlas into a flawed and compelling character whose ego is a cover for his internal flaws, into this edgy anime rival. He's stripped of all of what made him compelling, and that'll bite the dub's butt later. I'll even play a clip as well to prove my point.
Now this is the view that I was always meant to have, even if I did have to double-cross a few friends to get it. And to think that it was only a few years ago that I was living amongst the losers and garbage of the Satellite.
Look how they massacred my boy.
Sorry for all the diversions, but back to the plot. Jack shows Yusei around the city and tells Yusei how the city never sleeps and how it will continue to rule as king of Neo Domino City. Meanwhile, the Momentum guy, I forgot his name, explains to Rex about his new energy source he's developed, aptly named Momentum, and how it'll give Neo Domino the most powerful energy. Mikage, the secretary, tells Rex about Yusei's arrival, and Rex doesn't want this to be known, as it'll ruin Jack's reputation as king. He then grabs her by the jaw, which is very nice foreshadowing for later, as it's the first hint to Rex's true nature. Then Yusei and Jack duel in the stadium, which is to show off Red Demon's Dragon and Stardust Dragon. At the end of the duel, a giant red glowing dragon shows up, and it throws Momentum out of control due to the overpowering energy of the two dragons. While this is happening, Yusei and Jack's birthmarks are glowing, and it's burning the both of them. It's giving them a burning feeling. This overloads Momentum and kills the power in the city, and Yusei is promptly arrested by security for trespassing in the Neo Domino City. Yusei is then set down in a courtroom with his hands cupped behind his back. The jury does two things: confiscates his D-wheel and deck, and gives him a criminal mark with a painful-looking laser, much like Rowley's from earlier, for trespassing into Neo Domino City. They even go as far to say that Yusei doesn't deserve a livelihood, further showing the class divide between Satellite and Neo Domino City, which we'll see a lot more while Yusei's in prison. Rex, the Momentum guy, and the bootleg Joker are analyzing the duel between Jack and Yusei. They realize that Jack actually lost among the chaos of what happened that night, which means Jack's king status would be in jeopardy. Jack cannot forget this. The English dub changes this to a generic revenge plot for Yusei. He wants to know where Yusei is, but Rex informs him he is in prison right now, and he suggests Jack stays as not to ruin his reputation, and learn about the people of the stars and the signers, to know who he truly is. Back in the prison, the old man Yusei met earlier in the episode is getting his butt handed to him by another prisoner, Jin Himuro, and tells him he has worthless cards, which triggers Yusei to duel him afterward with the old man's deck to prove him otherwise, as Yusei sees no card as useless, and they're each a friend and a bond to him, which will become a recurring theme for later. Even the first opening theme of this show is called Kizuna Bonds. The only thing to note about the next episode is the lore dump that Rex gives to Jack about the people of the stars and the signers. He takes Jack to his place in a room with a weird temple inside. The legend of the signers goes something like this. Jack's birthmark represents the wings of the Crimson Dragon, the giant dragon we saw earlier in fact. His birthmark actually means he's a signer, same as Yusei in fact. Rex is the 360th Star Guardian, and this dates back long ago to a society which dates 3,000 years ago in the Andes. The people of the stars worship the Dragon Star and receive knowledge through the Star Dragon King. When evil forces called the Wicked Disturbances threatened them, the Crimson Dragon sealed them all on the Earth as Nazca lines. These exist in real life, by the way. Rex is searching for the signer to once again save humanity as soon the evil sealed in those lines are set to revive, and he believes that Jack can do just that. The next episode starts with Yusei being interrogated on where his dragon birthmark is, practically tortured by some machine to find it, and the chief, Takasu, tells Yusei if he's had enough, and that things like a D-wheel and deck aren't to be wasted on those satellite garbage. They couldn't find anything on Yusei, then Yusei tells the old man about it, where he then asks if he's a signer and tells Yusei what he'd heard about the people of the stars. According to their legend, the Crimson Dragon was their god, and people with dragon birthmarks are called signers. There are 5 signers, each with their own dragon, and we've seen 2 of them so far. Rex gives a speech to the inmates about the significance of why he split people in the Neo-Domino City and Satellite. As he does so, he walks into the crowd, stopping right next to Yusei and saying that someone that does so can cause trouble to their friends. After the speech, Yusei is told to stay, and Rex gives the most Sigma from Mega Man X response he could, and that he wouldn't hesitate to sacrifice one side.
You see, evolution requires sacrifice.
Rex wants Takasu to keep an eye on Yusei as he's a signer, but Takasu doesn't believe that some satellite trash can be a signer. The next day, he finds a knife in Jin's jacket and takes him in for interrogation. He's really just torturing him at this point, about Yusei. He refuses to give him info, and Takasu then announces to everyone that Jin committed a serious crime and that everyone is to take responsibility. Yusei then steps up to the plate, and Takasu offers a duel that if Yusei wins, he'll forget all about Jin's crime, and if he loses, Yusei will spend the rest of his sentence in lockdown. Since Yusei's cards were confiscated by security, he has no deck, so Takasu would win by default. But everyone actually offers Yusei cards that they had to use against him. The gimmick of this duel is quite simple. Take damage and you get electrocuted! Of course, this is rigged for Takasu since he's a dirty cheater, since he disabled the shocking on his end, and is having security tell him what's in Yusei's hand through the security cameras. Against all odds and help from the other prisoners who stopped Takasu's stupid scheme, Yusei pulls out a win and Rex calls him out for his cheating and lets Yusei out of prison. Totally not for ulterior motives, but okay. I really like the prison episodes. They further showed how Yusei is as a character, with him wanting to help out others who are mistreated through underestimation of the cards, as Bond since Yusei doesn't see any card as useless, or helping others out due to their criminal status or whatever other issues they have in their lives. There will be examples of this later that I will point out when we get there. Yusei is still without his D-wheel and deck, however, since security still has them. He then walks into a bar and asks for a glass of milk, and Yusei shows him the card Jean gave him, Giant Ushi Oni, after the duel, to meet with Saiga. He eventually meets him and tells him he wants his D-wheel back by infiltrating the security storage building that it's in, and Saiga helps him out. When Yusei infiltrates the building, however, Ushio is waiting for him for the usual reasons of Yusei being satellite scum to him. Yusei then grabs his D-wheel from the crate it's in and then duels Ushio. Yusei is able to escape Ushio, but not before a bunch of security guards electrocute him, and he collapses on the ground due to that. Thankfully, 2 kids find Yusei lying unconscious and they take him in. The 2 kids who took him in are Rua and Ruka, 2 twins where Rua is the boy and Ruka is the girl. They contemplate not helping him at first due to his criminal work, but Ruka can talk to his deck's spirits, more on that in a little bit, and she believes he's a good person from that. Yusei doesn't seem to remember what happened last night due to him collapsing on the ground. Another stupid dub change. They gave him amnesia for this one episode, and that is it. Why though? This episode is honestly really wholesome as Rua looks up that Jack is a duelist since he's the king, and he duels Yusei since Yusei is a duel disc and he wants to challenge him since he's a duelist, even if Rua's not up to snuff on his skills just yet. After the duel, when night hits, Yeager gives him a picture of his friends urging him to enter the Fortune Cup, or else his friends will suffer immense pain. Rua gets a call from his friend Tempei, who tells him all about a legendary duelist called the Black Rose Witch. She's no joke as she kills the people she duels. Where'd he find that out? A shady site that has questionable ads? Regardless of that, they make plans to hopefully meet her. The next day, now that they're freed from prison, Jin and Yanagi meet Yusei and Saiga at the latter's place. Jin challenges Yusei to a duel, but before he can get underway, Jack pulls up on his D-wheel and he returns Stardust Dragon as he wants to face Yusei in the Fortune Cup to settle their rivalry once and for all. Yeah, from last time they dueled. Back to Rua's shenanigans with the Black Rose Witch. He's asking around about her, but to no avail. Eventually, she shows herself as the ground is torn up by thorns. Yusei's birthmark reacts just like his duel with Jack. Seems to have correlation with these birthmarks. When she sees the mark, however, she screams, "Wretched mark!" Ooh, intriguing. She then runs off into an alleyway, taking off her mask, giving us a glimpse into her true identity. On the day of the Fortune Cup, Jaeger enters and tells Rex that the witch is a signer and she received an invitation to the Fortune Cup. Rex puts his plan in action, that'll gather all the signers. If you couldn't guess, the Fortune Cup is all a facade for this plan. But what follows is probably my favorite tournament arc in anime that I have seen so far. Although I love this arc a lot, due to the nature of tournament arcs in general, I'll be skipping around a bit so I don't have to bore you all with summarizing all the duels, since this review would probably be twice as long if I did. I've been doing that this whole review thus far, since the duels are really just set dressing for the plot, and there's only so many times I can say, this monster did this, or this character did this move, and things of that nature. I'll only discuss a duel if it meaningfully affects the characters, such as a lot of these in this arc, which is why I really like this arc anyway, despite it being a tournament arc. I'll gloss over the first few duels since they don't really add much to the plot beyond dueling, so I'll just start with Ruka's duel. All you missed that's plot relevant is the Black Rose Witch, or Aki Izayoi, using her powers again against some knight dude, I'm just gonna put his name on the screen, to reveal her identity. There's some filler duels, but those don't matter much for the purposes of what I have to say in this review. This duel reveals that Ruka has the power to interact with dual monster spirits, which is how she knew Yusei wasn't a malicious person from his cards back when she and Rua met him. This is much like how Judai could do the same in Yu-Gi-Oh! GX. Their main spirit is even a little Karibo, except Ruka's has a little bow. I just want to go on a bit of a tangent since I just brought up GX, but 5D's does callbacks and nostalgia really well in my opinion. It tries the line between callback and pandering well, and treats the older shows as world building while being fun references that don't detract from the story if you're not in the know, such as Neo Domino City being the successor to Domino City in the Battle City arc, as I mentioned previously, and Ruka having the spirit powers that Judai from GX has. There's some callbacks later in the show too that follow this trend. This could have very easily become a 2010 Sonic or Mario movie situation where the references substitute for plot depth. In addition to the fact that the references are just there for the sake of nostalgia and to get people to point at the screen and go, I remember that! Sonic Generations is the exception to this in 2010 Sonic's case, obviously, but thankfully 5D's doesn't fall into that trap and can actually be watched standalone and has actual plot depth beyond callbacks. Anyways, Rex tells Jack about how he entered her into the tournament upon learning of how she fell into a coma 8 years ago while she was dueling. While she was in that coma, she was in the spirit world, and he hopefully wants to unlock her signer powers because of that. During the time she was in the spirit world, she made a promise to Ancient Fairy Dragon that she'd eventually free her and save the spirit world from the evil forces that threaten it. Back then, she got scared and left the spirit world because of her being alone, and hearing Rua's voice convinced her to come back. Ruka confesses she was afraid to protect the spirits by herself, so she blocked this out of her mind and completely forgot about it. The next duel is Yusei up against Bomber. Yes, that's his name. He has quite the sad story, so buckle up. The duel isn't one I want to talk about, though. It's about his reasoning for entering the tournament. His reasoning for entering the tournament is that Rex would cooperate with him to rebuild his village after what happened to it. After Yusei wins the duel against Bomber, though, Bomber announces to everyone in the stadium that Rex is responsible for the destruction of his entire village. He burned down the entire village and killed everyone he knew and loved. To no one's shock, this is Rex trying to summon the Crimson Dragon. What a genuine scumbag. In a scene I really like, Bomber tries to assassinate Rex for his heinous actions, and Yusei then stops him, saying he'd be no better than Rex if he kills him, despite Yusei also hating what he did to Bomber's village. Meanwhile, a spike from Bomber's D-Will left over from the duel drills right through Rex's hand, which is apparently made of metal. Odd. Next up is Aki versus someone who knows way too much about her. He's literally a duel profiler. Stalker much? Before the duel, Aki stares at her mask. Divine, her mentor of sorts I'll talk about later, asks her if she's afraid. Aki tells Divine that she's gonna hurt people again as she did back when we first saw her and in her past. Divine tells her not to be afraid as she's the future of psychic duelists. He also tells her to show her face and let everyone know of her existence. The purpose of this duel is to give a bit more backstory on Aki, so the duel profiler gives the lore. Aki wishes to be able to make friends, but it's always been difficult for her due to her powers hurting others when she duels. And no one else wants to be friends with a witch. This actually happened to a student at the Duel Academy where she hurt a fellow student while she dueled. Nice GX callback, by the way. Since then, Aki was feared by everyone. There was also another incident with her powers where she accidentally harmed her father after she won a duel against him when she was younger. and it really affected her mentally as she slowly started to take on the witch persona. She eventually went to the Arcadia movement since Divine is the only person who saw the potential in her powers, as until then she saw them as a curse as they did nothing but hurt people. Aki wins the duel and it's the finals against Yusei versus Aki. And I'll say this right now, this is my favorite pair of episodes in the arc. It really humanizes the both of them, and it's a shining example I give as to why Yusei is a great protagonist and he's the embodiment of his whole Bond idea to me. He sees someone struggling and he tries to reason and try to understand why they're like this. During the duel, he feels the rejection and anger inside her, but there's another emotion he feels. He realized that she likes using her powers to hurt people and enjoys tormenting others. In my favorite scene, she looks at her wretched mark and asks why it hurts so much. I'll just play the clips. I'd say I can't possibly do this scene justice.
楽しくないんだろ。
うるさい。
苦しいんじゃないのか。
どうしてこのあざがうつく。どうして楽しくない。どうして苦しい。
お前自身が変わる時がやってきたんだ。お前を苦しめてきた破壊への喜び、その痛みが同じあざを持った俺たちが共有する痛みに変わってきたんじゃないのか。俺たちを導いたこの印、この痛みは何かを訴えている。その答えを得るには自分で考えなければいけないんだ。その答えをこのあざは持っているんじゃないのか。考えを預けるな。お前自身で考えるんだ。
魔女の私が何を考える。ディバインが私を導いて愛してくれればそれで。
違う。お前がお前を愛するんだ。
そんなことができればできないから苦しんでるんじゃないか。ブラックローズドラゴンの効果発動。ブラックローズがいる。
The dub butchered this scene so badly. They changed it to a simple, your mark is beautiful, when that wasn't the point. The point is not to let Divine think for her, since she's relied on him so much due to the previously aforementioned rejection and anger she felt with her powers. The real point of the scene that Yusei was trying to make is to become her own person regardless of what the signer mark entails for her and the rest of the signers. Shortly after, the rest of her mask breaks off, revealing she's crying despite calling Yusei a wretched foe earlier. She cries to Yusei to help her. After Yusei wins the duel, Divine then walks her out telling her she has done well. Yusei to me is like Sonic, a static character who helps others out even if it's not the most correct or morally upstanding thing. A great example of this is in Sonic and the Black Knight, when Sonic sees a kid crying yet he has no time to finish the trial he was sent on. But despite not being able to make it in time, he does help her anyway. That's why I like Yusei and Sonic as static characters. They have their depth from having the other characters grow around them and helping others out. That's what makes them compelling characters. Now it's the final duel of the Fortune Cup between Jack and Yusei. Realizing that there's 4 signers in the stadium, Jack, Aki, Haruka, and himself, Yusei tells the others that it's dangerous to stay due to the immense power of just him and Jack dueling. Haruka, however, is still concerned about the fate of Yusei's friends. Remember, that's why Yusei's even bothering to enter this thing. Yusei then tells her that he's going to talk with Rex about that. Yusei then heads up to meet him. On his way, Yusei beats the crap out of 2 security guards and quickly deals with them in stylish fashion. Yusei brings up to Rex that he kidnapped his friends and forced them to enter the tournament. Yusei then asks why he's going through all this trouble. Jack intervenes and answers that question and shows the signer mark on his arm, saying that's the reason. Jack then goes on to explain that Rex manipulated him and treated him as this almighty king, when in reality Rex was using him for his own goals to gather the signers. Rex then questions Jack, asking, wasn't it your desire to be the king? Jack then replies with, only as the king I desired to be. Great moment. Before we get to the epic final duel with Jack, there's some backstory I need to go into with him. 2 years ago, Jack is sitting in his throne in an abandoned theater, and Jaeger walks up to Jack and tells him that Rex feels it's needed to have a king rule Neo Domino City. Jaeger then tells him the escape route, and that he also must have the Red Demon's Dragon and Stardust Dragon cards, the latter being Yusei's. Jaeger leaves Jack to consider whether he wants to stay in Satellite or rule over Neo Domino as king. The next day, Jack tells Raleigh that he plans to leave Satellite and that he needs Raleigh's help. Jack then tells Yusei that Raleigh has been kidnapped and that he knows where he is. Yusei arrives to where Jack said Raleigh was. What Yusei doesn't know, however, is that Jack tied him to a boat by knocking him out first and stranding him in the water. Jack then gives the ultimatum of saving his friend or taking both cards that have the invitation of going to the city. He asks Yusei which it'll be. Yusei of course chose rescuing Raleigh. Meanwhile, Jack steals the Stardust Dragon and D-Wheel from Yusei to get into Neo Domino, which takes us back to the present. I know some give Jack flack for this, and justifiably so, but the show doesn't expect you to sympathize or justify his actions either. As we'll see later, even Jack himself doesn't justify his own actions, as he regrets doing this in a stupid attempt to be king. I'll just say this, consider the context he's in. He's lived in poverty his entire life, and when he's given the chance to desperately leave it, he took the chance despite betraying his friends. Again, not justifying his actions, and neither does he. This isn't about erasing the past. It's about acknowledging the mistake he made and recognizing how to improve himself as a person, which we'll definitely see more later. That's what makes Jack compelling. Not that he made a bad choice, but how he strives to improve himself through his actions. That's what makes him a compelling rival. It's a complicated friendship with past baggage, and for the story this show is trying to tell, I much prefer this to a generic anime rival like the dub simplified him to, or a friend who's all buddy-buddy, much like the newer Pokemon rivals. The final duel between Jack is mostly just for spectacle and a capstone of both Jack and Yusei's rivalry and the Fortune Cup arc itself. As Jack and Yusei are dueling, since they're both signers, the Crimson Dragon reappears and causes momentum to overload again, and Rex tells Akutsu to shut it down if he values his life. With all the signers together, Rex reaches into a tank containing an arm with a 5th signer mark. This transports all the signers to another dimension via the Crimson Dragon's power. Wait, how does Rex have a dismembered arm? Whatever. In this dimension, they see visions of a giant spider mark on fire over satellite, destroying a bunch of buildings in the process, which gives a sneak preview of what's to come. With Stardust Dragon and the power of the bonds with his cards, Yusei is finally able to officially defeat Jack, even though he technically did in the first duel with him, and officially take the title of King of Neo Domino City, thus ending the Fortune Cup arc. Wow, this arc was amazing. We've got setup for all our characters, the world of 5D's, and some amazing character moments and backstory for each of our main characters. It perfectly establishes the dynamics of our characters and how the world of 5D's operates, and sets up some interesting plot points to follow up on. All of this sets the stage for the next arc, which I think is even better than this one, if you can believe that. Much more elevated and personal stakes for a protagonist, payoff to all those lingering questions, and even more compelling character moments. Anyways, without further ado, it's on to the Dark Santa's arc, which I think is nearly perfect and is why I love 5D so much. The Dark Santa's arc starts directly after the Fortune Cup arc. Yusei's friends are watching his victory on TV. Oh yeah, they're free since they were trapped in a crate in the dump. Back at the stadium, they're reporting on Yusei's win against Jack, where we meet Angela and Carly. I'll focus more on Carly than Angela since she'll be much more relevant in this arc. Carly's a struggling reporter who's reporting on Yusei's victory over Jack, who has a bit of a stutter, which another reporter, Angela, then pushes her out of the way and teases her for stuttering and reports on the same story. She's the real witch, not Aki. Oh, and she reminds me of Mai from the original Yu-Gi-Oh! Design-wise. Jack is taken to the hospital on a stretcher due to the injuries sustained after the duel with Yusei. The others warn Yusei to get out of the stadium since the crowd suspects Yusei hurt Jack due to his criminal mark. Yup, another example of Neo Domino and satellite classism. A little later, the reporters are waiting outside a room guarded by security to question Rex. Angela asks what he can tell her about Yusei. Rex replies that all he knows is that he was born in satellite, which, as we'll find out later, is a big giant lie, and he'll continue to push this narrative. Carly then mentions that it looked like Yusei's arm was glowing after the Crimson Dragon appeared in the stadium, if that was significant or not. Rex then replies that perhaps the sheen of Yusei's D-wheel was reflecting off of Carly's eyes. We all know he's full of crap since we've seen it happen multiple times before. After this, Carly is contacted by her boss, who is angry that she failed to get the scoop on Yusei. If she doesn't get a scoop, she'll be fired. Carly watches a clip of Yusei just before the Crimson Dragon appears and spots the birthmark glowing on his arm. She correctly figures out that Rex is bluffing for the sake of hiding that information from the public, as that would reveal his ulterior motives. We then cut to a dark room where a few Organization 13, Dark Signers, are sitting in. They ominously state that they will begin their battle with the Signers after 5,000 years. Back at the hideout, Yusei's arm is burning again, just like when he dueled Jack, but it's a different kind of feeling than that time. He spots a man in a cloak with a glowing purple birthmark, similar to the spider that tore up Satellite in the Crimson Dragon's vision. The man then starts a duel of darkness, and Yusei accepts to get info on what the heck is going on. They're both surrounded by a wall of purple flames. Yusei notices the cards are inflicting physical pain, much like Aki's psychic powers. The Dark Signer uses a Dark Tuner to Dark Synchro Summon a monster of negative level. It works the same as when you are Synchro Summoning a Tuner monster plus other monsters to add to the level of the summoned monster. Synchro Summoning is quite simple compared to the later Yu-Gi-Oh! Mechanics, but it can get a bit much when characters are doing combos with trap, magic, and monster cards, since it's a bit much with the explanations, but at least it's cool to watch. You may have noticed I haven't gone in depth with the dueling, since truthfully it's my least favorite part of Yu-Gi-Oh! I usually tune it out a bit since the mechanics do get overcomplicated and the explanations for card effects can get wordy. Despite that, however, 5D still works structurally as it uses that as set dressing for the real character moments and plot beats that do happen in the duels. This isn't an issue exclusive to 5D's, it's a Yu-Gi-Oh problem in general. The duels are there to sell the cards and keep younger kids entertained. Although 5D's subject matter, as we'll see later in this arc, can get quite heavy for children's TV standards. It's unfortunate that 4Kids butchered this arc in the English dub especially because of that. It's home to some of the best writing and material in the Yu-Gi-Oh series in my opinion. After the duel, Yusei demands answers on what just happened, but his opponent doesn't remember a single thing that happened, and his birthmark disappeared. A spider then flees from his body, and any trace of being a Dark Signer is gone in an instant. Back in Satellite, people in Dark Signer robes start preaching how the Crimson Dragon is a wicked god who will bring disaster to this world. What is this? Team Plasma from Black and White 1? They're literally doing the same thing they did with how capturing Pokemon was evil. Anyway, the preview for the film Road of the King is set to premiere at a huge gala. At the event, Carly makes her way into the crowd, who bumps into Angela again and berates her for her outfit. Yeah, I hate this woman. Also, that guy in the crowd is really horny. The world's top model, Misty, arrives and looks over at Carly for some reason. Rex is premiering the film inside, and the narrator says that Jack was born in Tops in Neo Domino City.
Liar!
Angela asks Rex if he knew that Jack was born in Satellite, just like you say. Carly then goes to investigate that to write a scoop on it, but before she can leave the party, Misty stops her and tells Carly that she can see the shadow of death about her, saying that she will die soon. Okay, that's very ominous. Surely that's nothing. Hordes of reporters want to cover the rumor that Jack is from Satellite, and Carly manages to sneak into the hospital, disguising herself as a nurse. Ushio was tasked by Jaeger to get Jack from the hospital. However, the same spider that turned the guy Yusei dueled into a Dark Signer turned Ushio into a Dark Signer as well, complete with the mark and everything. Not much about the duel I want to comment on besides Carly saying this to Jack. No less than the former king. Jack is clearly annoyed by her saying former king, as clearly the king status means more to him than just being the king of the city. Yusei stands on an unfinished bridge to Satellite, and Rex tells Yusei that it's time he told Yusei the truth. We're then introduced to a new character, Crow Hogan, who's rummaging through a warehouse and stealing a few decks of cards like scalpers when they find Pokemon cards. If you're wondering, he stole those cards for a group of children he takes after. Back to Yusei. Rex tells Yusei how the bridge that they're on, it was meant to bridge, in a literal sense, Neo Domino and Satellite together. Yusei then discusses the possibility that Rex could finish the bridge due to his position of power, but Rex says he cannot do that. If he did, he would be connecting the disaster of Satellite and Neo Domino City. Lore dump time! Rex explains to Yusei that the Dark Signers are the enemies to the Signers, and that they've come back after 5,000 years and the battle for the world will begin. This is repeated from the last battle, which happened 5,000 years ago. As mentioned much earlier in the show, the people of the stars sealed the wicked evil into the Nazca lines. Yusei then asks why the battle has started again. Rex responds by asking Yusei if he knows about old momentum. He explains that 17 years ago, something called Zero Reverse occurred, where old momentum's rotation reversed and caused a massive explosion of energy which destroyed parts of Satellite. After 5,000 years, the seal that kept the evil within the Nazca lines weakened, and old momentum has started to become a door to the Netherworld, or basically just hell. To stop this, the Signers must defeat the Dark Signers, which Rex held the Fortune Cup to gather the Signers. Yusei then points out to Rex how he only knows of 4 out of the 5 Signers, which Yanagi told him about the 5 Signers back in prison. Rex replies with, "The last one shall appear soon enough." This next episode is one I really like. I'll get Yusei and Crow's reunion out of the way since it's not what I want to focus on during this episode, but real quick, Yusei and Crow meet after some time and go to Yusei's hideout where his friends are all okay. They notice Crow, and as he starts talking to them, he's interrupted by security who wants him for stealing the cards from earlier. Yusei and Crow then duel security, nothing much to talk about. The real focus is on Jack and Carly, since this is probably one of the most important episodes in the show. Jack looks at a newspaper which has an article on Jack being from Satellite, and he reflects on his loss to Yusei at the Fortune Cup. Carly's boss threatens to have her get an article once again and asks Jack to get an article on him, although he already left. The episode is them doing goofy antics such as going shopping to get him to disguise that from the media and going to the amusement park, all the while Ushio and Mikage follow them. Eventually, Carly notices how Jack is depressed. This makes her wonder if writing an article about him makes her a bad person. Angela heard a tip that Jack is here and she wants to prove he's from Satellite. Carly actually sticks up for Jack, saying that he's hurting inside after losing his status as the king. What follows is probably my favorite scene in the arc so far as Jack reflects on his past and comes clean to Carly, and I just want to let the scene speak for itself.
俺はあの時全てをなくし代わりに手に入れたのは身分を偽り道家を演じ続けるキングへの道自分が何者かも忘れた愚かなデュエリストへの道だった今全てをなくしてようやく気づいた俺の心の奥底で俺を支えていたものに
そこまで分かっているなら生き直したらいいじゃないですか。雄星との戦いで 今までのジャックは死んだんです。これから本物のジャックアトラスを生きるんです。
This was such an amazing episode as it really made Jack feel more human. As while his actions were bad as he was succumbing to his friends, there's a reason he did it, as I said before. This whole scene and arc really makes Jack feel more like a three-dimensional character than a generic anime rival. This is what I meant earlier in the review when I said Dub Jack had ramifications later in the show. His whole character arc and progression doesn't work when he's just mean to Yusei and demeans him for being inferior because he's from Satellite. This completely undermines his original portrayal of being a prideful man who made mistakes and slowly realized how his ideology was flawed. This does not feel earned at all in the context of the dub. Yusei then heads to the deepest part of Satellite to investigate Old Momentum, as Rex told him all about that a couple episodes ago. Mikage asks for Jack to take him to Yusei as per Rex's request. Mikage gives the lore dump that Zero Reverse wasn't an accident like the public thinks it is. It was in reality a disaster that occurred 17 years ago that split Neo Domino and Satellite. It killed Yusei's parents and he was sent to an orphanage in Satellite. Yep. Yusei was born in Neo Domino this whole time. When Yusei arrives at Old Momentum, he meets a familiar face, Kiryu, and they start a writing duel. The next few episodes are focused on Yusei and Kiryu, and they have history. They used to be on a team called Team Satisfaction. It consisted of Yusei, Jack, Crow, and Kiryu, and they wanted to defeat all the opposing dueling gangs in Satellite. Despite them beating all the gangs and having total doms over Satellite, however, Kiryu gets into a fight with the security guards and kills them. Yusei and Kiryu fight as the former just saw what the latter did, and then the police arrive and Kiryu calls Yusei a traitor. We'll get into the finer details later. In the duel, Kiryu uses his Earthbound God, which I will just flash the name on screen, which is an all-powerful card which all the main Darksiders have, and I love the way they use CG here. This show does use CG for wide-angle shots, and it looks really hit and miss, especially when they use it for extended periods of time. It just looks awkward. But here, in the instance of the Earthbound Gods, it really makes them look out of place in a great way, and it really shows the scale of these things. Also, why does this Earthbound God remind me of the Shadow Level from X5? The Earthbound God, when being summoned, sacrificed the citizens of Satellite in order to power this behemoth. Which is what Rex actually meant by one side must be sacrificed back in prison when he told Yusei that. Yusei is terrified of this thing, which leads him to fall off his D-wheel, since none of his cards work against it. I love this moment, since it takes a character whose whole thing up until this point is optimism and helping others, and it gives him a moment of weakness, which makes him feel more real than the static character he was before. After the fall, it's revealed Yusei was impaled in the chest with a piece of metal on the ground, and thus the duel ends in a draw. Jack shows concern, but unfortunately Mikage says he can't do any good without a D-wheel, even though they have a helicopter, but whatever. Thankfully, Yusei's friends carry his D-wheel, but not without some shenanigans, and Crow drove him to Martha's. Point is, they all reunite at Martha's. When they all get to Martha's, Yusei's wounds are being treated. Thankfully, Yusei will be okay after his wounds heal. At Ruka and Rua suggests they recruit Aki for the Signers battle against the Darksiders. The others are unsure about this though, but despite that, they head to the Arcadia movement to get her to join anyway. This doesn't seem like a good idea. They have Arcadia in the name. Surely nothing bad can happen. Right?
Oh no!
While Aki is practicing her dueling, Divine watches nearby and a colleague of his approaches him and notices a decline in Aki's psychic powers as her powers are directly linked to the violent nature of her mind. However, there's been a change in her mind, and Divine knows it's because of Yusei's goated scene in the Fortune Cup. Divine meets with Aki and encourages her to tell him if there's something on her mind. He then talks about how psychic duelists have been discriminated against, and that's why he created the Arcadia movement. He also says that he's the one that saved her and he was the one who gave her a home when she had nowhere else to go. Well, yes, technically what he's saying is true, but in the most twisted way possible to benefit him, his ulterior motives, and his goals. Reminds me of a certain character from Sonic. Funny, since the character they're manipulating also has psychic powers. I'll say this now, I don't like Divine and the show sure does a good job making sure you don't, so mission accomplished. Back to the others. In the Arcadia movement, after hearing why they're there, Divine actually agrees to help, much to everyone's surprise. Divine then goes and gets Aki. Of course, this was all a setup as sleeping gas leaks in through a vent, causing them all to fall asleep, as of course, Divine just wanted Ruka as a member of his organization, since he's looking for new members. Divine then chains Rua to the ground and performs a bunch of cruel experiments, shocking the literal child until he can't take it anymore. This is his way of testing those who have powers, by the way. Carly, missing Jack after he was taken back by Mikage, cries for him to come back, but eventually she stops, and she eventually says she'll never give up on the story, as she'd lose contact with Jack otherwise. Carly then goes into Kurumizawa's shop, who's just a bit too obsessed with Dark Magician Girl. She asks him for clues, and he eventually gives her what he has on the Arcadia movement, since Aki's the only one Carly knows the location of. Of course, this wasn't free information, as this was after she gives him a Dark Magician Girl figure. Carly looks through her new clues and sees a file concerning Misty. Interesting. She then goes to Misty's apartment and explains she's investigating the signs of the Crimson Dragon, which led her to the Arcadia movement. Carly then shows Misty the information that the latter was in. Misty confirms that it was true and that her brother was killed by the Arcadia movement. Ultimately, everyone agreed that it was the Black Rose Witch's doing, and the investigation consisted of a single police interview with the Arcadia movement. That's not suspicious at all. She then sneaks around to find more information, and eventually she stumbles into a list of missing people and info on Rex. She sees something in that information that shocks her, but is promptly interrupted by Divine. They then duel, which ultimately has Carly be thrown out the window of this tall building as she follows many stories, remembering what Misty said to her at the party, and then hits the ground. Yup. She's dead. I'm not sugarcoating that. The dub changed it so she fell into some purple fog. Ugh. Oh boy. Did coughing fart or something? Stupid dub change is a stupid dub change. Either way, Carly is revived in order to send Divine to the grave, a dark signer mark then glows on her arm. She then challenges Divine to a duel of darkness. Carly becomes engulfed in a purple light, donning the dark signer robes. Her eyes are now blackened from her evil nature, and a mark appears below her eyes. Wait, I've seen this before. Where have I seen this before? Oh yeah, Thousand Year Door. Aki then tries to look for Divine, and as she's doing so, she's confronted by Misty as she won't let her go to him. Misty then says she won't escape due to her revenge. Aki says how she doesn't know what she's talking about, but Misty believes she's hiding the truth. They then duel. Aki still doesn't know what Misty owes against her. Misty argues that something Aki has always done. She's repeatedly destroyed under the guise that she was really saving herself, not caring about how many were sacrificed in the process. Misty then tells her that she killed her brother, causing her to freeze. Eventually, Misty summons her Earthbound god, I'm gonna flash the name on the screen, the Giant Lizard, and it sacrifices the citizens of Neo Dominos. So yeah, remember sacrificing one side? That crap you told Yusei Rex? Yeah, that's a complete and utter lie, but okay. Carla then does the same with her Earthbound god, the giant bird. Gonna flash the name on screen again. The two Earthbound gods attack the building, and the bird attacks Divine, and Aki later sees him fall to his doom when she calls out to him. Due to the two Earthbound gods' destruction, Misty calls off her duel with Aki, and the others escape the collapsing building. Jack arrives and asks what happened, and they say that Aki and a Darksigner were fighting. Jack drives his D-wheel up the stairs, and finds Carly's glasses now broken as he calls out to her, but to no avail. He does find and save an unconscious Aki on the ground though. Later, Carly, not fully aware of what just happened as she only remembers attacking Divine, she begins to panic as she wonders if she did something so horrible. Carly then falls to her knees and cries for Jack to help her. Misty then tells Carly that this is her destiny, and that she was chosen, like the rest of them. They won the favor of the gods of death, as she says. If you couldn't have guessed by now, the Darksiders are all people who have died in some way and were reborn through their desires. Kind of like Persona 4 and 5 with the shadows/treasures respectively, how they represent the deepest desires. The next few episodes are great as they finally follow up on that plot thread of Yusei talking to Aki at the Fortune Cup I loved so much, and we get to know more about her backstory in these next few episodes. The next day after the incident, Aki is taken to the hospital and she's still unconscious. The doctor did all they can do and she might stay unconscious due to her emotional trauma. Aki's parents think they drove her to this point and beg her to wake up. Jack states that they need someone who knows the real Aki, but with Divine now gone, the only other option is Yusei. Aki's dad flies the satellite via helicopter and asks Yusei for help, and they blame themselves for Aki's current state. Backstory time. Aki slowly felt neglected by her dad due to his work responsibilities even though he wanted to spend time with her but couldn't. This all comes to a tipping point when they finally do duel and she accidentally uses her powers and hurts her dad while the signer mark glows on her arm. Hence why Aki called it a wretched mark earlier. He then calls her a monster, which gives her trauma of that moment whenever she thinks about it. Her dad then tells Yusei that it's the one word he regrets saying to her. Aki's power made her a challenge as her parents had no way of dealing with her because of her powers. He remembers slapping her on the cheek, and Aki asks if he did that because she wasn't normal and she was a monster. Eventually, her dad sent her to Duel Academy, but she was still isolated there due to her powers. One day, she ran home and saw her parents celebrating and thought it was because she wasn't home. All of this led to her donning the Black Witch Rose persona and meeting Divine as he, quote-unquote, cares about her and her powers.
This is a load of barnacles.
This all leads back to a flashback of Yusei telling her to think for herself back in the Fortune Cup. Back in the present, Aki's dad pleads with Yusei to help open her heart up, but Yusei replies that he can't help her in his current condition, and Martha has a scene I really like.
お前はかつての仲間だった桐生と戦うことを恐れている。向き合うことをね。ちゃんと向き合えないで何が仲間だい。
俺は桐生に恨まれても仕方が。
わかんない子だね。 今のお前は心の扉を閉ざしちまってる。その扉を開けてくれるのは仲間じゃないのかい？仲間といることがその扉を叩くことになる。その音に気づけば扉が開くこともあるんじゃないのかね。まずは仲間に向き合わなきゃなあ、優勢。
I love this scene since it shows that Yusei isn't some perfect protagonist, but that he has flaws and emotions that make him compelling as a character. He doesn't want to help because he's afraid another friend would turn on him like Kiryu did. Yusei and Aki's dad arrive at the hospital and Aki sees Yusei. She asks if he came to rescue her. Her parents are also there and she thinks they'll mock her since Divine is gone. Yusei and Aki then duel for Yusei to try to reach her heart as he did in the Fortune Cup. Aki goes on about how Divine is the only person who gave her a place in life and that place was ripped away from her. Yusei argues that she does have a place all along with her family, but she sees the world as wretched without Divine. I just love this episode since it's back and forth between Aki, Yusei, and her dad, and it shows how neither Aki or her dad's side are completely right. Her dad neglected her and made some bad parenting choices such as slapping her, and Aki takes her anger out by lashing out literally in this case. She literally uses Black Rose Dragon as whips. In the end, her dad was afraid of her powers and he always really did love her despite that. The end of this duel is probably my favorite part of this episode, and it's one of my favorites in this arc, to be honest, since it just shows Yusei as a great character again, and it shows how much he values bonds and friendships regardless of whoever's background it is. The episode ends on a really nice scene of Aki and her dad making up, as Aki is finally able to have a sense of place with her family and the signers.
優勢、終わらせて。お願い。この戦いを。
トラップカードオープン。シンクロヘイロー。シンクロモンスター1体が戦闘で相手モンスターを破壊できなかった時、そのシンクロモンスターは攻撃力を2倍にし、もう一度攻撃することができる。今こそ魔女の呪縛を打ち破れ。スターダストドラゴンでブラックローズドラゴンを攻撃。シューティングソニック。
I'm gonna go on a small little rant. How does these two episodes have more backstory for their character than the entire Star Force anime?
Except you stay.
The games for Star Force are fine. I think the backstory there is fine. Like, we have enough for Geo since, Geo lost his dad in a space accident, but, they do nothing with it in the anime past the first episode. They show a flashback and that's it. Yeah, I just wanted to get that little rant out because I wanted to praise these episodes for giving us more backstory on a character when the main draw of Star Force was the main character's backstory and they barely touch on it in the anime. Sorry for the Star Force tangent, but anyways, back to 5D's. Mikage shows Aki and Yusei a video of the true nature of the Arcadia movement. She shows them that the video contains details on how children have been abducted from their families and subject to experimentation. Yeah. Divine is one sick individual. Mikage tells Aki that Divine picked psychic duelists with enhanced powers to use them as soldiers in war-torn parts of the world. Yup. Literal child soldiers. Turns out Aki was one of the people he planned on using. Upon this revelation, Aki runs away crying and Yusei goes after her. Yusei catches up to Aki and she tells him that she's still glad as having Divine accept her outweighed the fact that he'd been using her this whole time for her powers. Yusei says that he understands that and cannot reject her for doing so, as he has no right to reject anyone. One sure he is sure of, though, is that there are people who trust and need her, such as himself. Really great scene and speaks to who Yusei is as a character and how disgusting of a person Divine is. Rex invites the signers to give them the lore dump. Not gonna bore you all this time since I've pretty much said everything he does, so not much is new. After Rex's lore dump, Yusei sits on a bench outside still worried about Kiryu. You know what? I'll just play the clip since I really love this scene.
Jack, 何を?
貴様がどうすべきか教えてやると言ってるんだ。なんだその目は。そんな捨てられた飼い犬のような目をしているから桐生に敗北したんだ。俺は貴様が憎い。この俺をキングの座から引きずり下ろし屈辱を与えてくれた貴様が、あの時の不動優勢はどこへ消えた。死んだのは桐生じゃない。優勢、貴 様の方だ。俺は戦えるぞ。桐生はかつての友であっても今は倒すべき敵。
俺は
もし奴が恨むなら何倍にもして恨み返してやる。それができん貴様などただの抜け殻だ。
俺は死んでなどいない。
その目だ。
Meanwhile, on Satellite, Crow is dueling Jaeger since he thinks he's a Dark Signer and wants to help Yusei with the fight in any way he can. Back in Neo Domino City, Aki and Yusei look towards the sunset. Aki wonders if sunsets were like this 5,000 years ago. Yusei replies that they probably were, but it's the future that is uncertain right now and they must protect this world. Up on the roof, Jack lies down, staring at the sky as he looks at Carter's glasses. Mikage rushes up to Jack to tell him something bad has happened in Satellite. While Crow and Jaeger were dueling, a black fog envelops Satellite, and Crow attempts to escape the fog with his D-wheel, while other people in Satellite disappear. Before they fly off in a helicopter to go to Satellite, Mikage asks Jack why he's to go to Satellite, and he replies that it's something he must do. Mikage wonders if it has something to do with Carly. Rex says that the fog is occurring in Old Momentum, and that Destiny is guiding the son of Dr. Fudo. He was the main person behind Old Momentum. Rex states that their mission is to defeat the Darksigners. Yeah, we know, Rex. Before everyone boards the helicopter, Yusei asks Rex to promise that after they defeat the Darksigners, that he will finish the bridge that connects Satellite and Neo Domino, the Daedalus Bridge. Rex then asks if Yusei intends to follow the man from the legend. I didn't mention it up until now, but they did mention it a few times. Yusei then replies that if that was true, then there'd be no reason to discriminate against Satellite anymore. Rex agrees on Yusei's offer, and Yusei then thinks to himself that he wants to reunite Satellite and Neo Domino City, even if it means his own life. Inside the helicopter, Aki asks Mikage about Old Momentum and Yusei's dad, Dr. Fudo. Mikage once again describes Zero Reverse, same explanation as before, and she tells everyone that Yusei's father is a supervisor of MIDS, or the Moment Investigation Development Section. Ushio asks why some satellite scum was in charge. To his surprise, Jack replies that Yusei was born in the city. Having called Yusei satellite scum throughout the show, he realized he wasn't actually a satellite scum all this time. Jack then replies, I was born in Satellite. So what? Jack being a goat as usual, they all arrive at Martha's and are greeted by Martha, Saiga, and 2 children. The children are intimidated by Ushio as he turns and asks, what? And then they run away. Ushio shrugs it off and he sees no value in being popular amongst those brats. However, Ushio accepts the respect that boy gives him after asking if he's part of security and says he'd love to wear the uniform. Inside, Martha is glad to see Yusei has indeed saved Aki and asks if he's still afraid of Kiryu. Although he's still afraid of him, he says he has a lot of friends on his side and says once he has a sense of camaraderie, he should be able to overcome those fears. Ushio proceeds to pick some flowers for Mikage since he's a giant simp, but he notices the boy from earlier that respected him was watching him. Martha sneaks up on Ushio and drags him inside where she forces him to help with the dinner. He also has to clean the toilets, but the boy who looks up to him offers to help and starts sweeping the floor. After Ushio complains to Martha that she made him do labor, she tells him how the boy who helped him earlier had lost his father in a robbery. He will always remember the security officers who risked their lives to try to save his father. For that reason, he wants to join security in the future. Ushio then reminds her that satellite people can't join security, but Martha replies that nothing is impossible. At dinner, Yusei tells the children that once the Darksigners are defeated, a bridge connecting Satellite and Neo Domino will be built, eliminating the discrimination between the 2 cities, allowing the children to be who they want to be. Suddenly, a Darksigner appears outside. His name is Rudger. He introduces himself and holds up his spider birthmark, which Yusei recognizes as the giant fiery spider from the vision at the Fortune Cup finale. Rudger wants a duel and Jack confronts him, but Yusei stops him and tells him to take the others to safety and tells Rudger that he will face him. During the duel, Rudger is able to summon his Earthbound God with a name that's not impossible to pronounce, Uru. He explains that the fog from earlier is the souls of people from Satellite, but he's using to summon it. Rudger laughs in regard to Yusei facing an Earthbound God, and he says it stands above all else like the energy of Old Momentum. He finds it amusing to be facing none other than Dr. Fudo's son. Yusei questions him about what he knows about his dad, and he learns that he, along with his brother Rex, were his assistants in the Old Momentum project. He tells Yusei that it was his father who wanted the development of it to stop due to the dangers of Old Momentum. Of course, the higher-ups wouldn't allow that and placed Rudger in charge. After that, Zero Reverse happened as we already know. Rudger then has his Earthbound God attack, and the building Martha and Ushio are in begins to shake. Ushio helps the boy to safety, but Martha falls up to the other end of the roof, and Ushio tells her not to give up, but Martha tells him to take her, the boy as he is his hero after all. Ushio admits he's no hero, as he would often insult people from Satellite. I really like Ushio's little character arc, because even someone who hated Satellite before came around and became a better person, even if it took him a while to come around. Yusei and Jack call up to Martha, and she shouts down to them that they've been such good boys, and she's sure they will build the bridge between the city and Satellite. She then slides down and falls off the edge of the building, but during this, she sacrifices part of the Earthbound God's summoning. Enraged by this, Yusei says he could never forgive him for what he just did. Eventually, Rudger is engulfed with the purple light like all the other Darksiders and replaces himself with Rally. Rally stands motionless, bearing the spider birthmark, and Yusei starts to run over to Rally, but Rudger remarks how ironic it is that another friend Yusei must save was right here. Rally informs Yusei that the loser of this duel will disappear, then Rally throws the duel for Rudger and Yusei rushes over to Rally. Rally tells Yusei to protect Satellite before turning into black fog and crumbling away. Yusei screams Rally's name as the Darksider flames surrounding the duel disappear. The others rush over to Yusei and the 5 Darksiders appear. Rudger says this was quite an interesting show, but this is where the battle between the Siders and Darksiders comes to a breaking point. Kiryu tells Yusei he hasn't conquered his fear of his Earthbound God and laughs maniacally. Yusei stands up and admits that he is afraid of his rage over how much he wants to beat them. Truth be told, the next 4-parter isn't much to talk about. It's Ruka's return to the spirit world to save it that she promised back when she was in the coma and in the Fortune Cup. To give the Cliff Notes version, the objective of the Senators is to place their respective dragon card into the controllers of old momentum to shut it down and save the world. Demok, a Darksider, has the ancient fairy dragon card, so they need to stop his plot. As Rua duels in the real world, he gets his butt beat, by the way, and Ruka saves the spirit world, which does have a neat minus gimmick where time flows backwards, which is how the world looks so barren since nature was wilting. Demok is probably the least fleshed out Darksider writing-wise, as he's just the catalyst for the spirit world's demise and not much else. I feel the same with the twins, actually, but they actually serve a greater narrative purpose as the source of levity in an otherwise serious story. So I don't mind simple characters in the sea of more complex ones. In the end, Ruka comes back in the nick of time and helps Rua defeat Demok and also saves the spirit world along with the ancient fairy dragon from the demon monkey king, Zaman. Ruka puts her respective card into the controller. Oh, his Earthbound God is the, Flying Dutchman, take it away.
The monkey!
Anyway, next up is the Bomber Duel, which yes, he's back after he becomes a Darksider as Rudger saved him from being arrested from his assassination attempt on Rex and reminds him of his revenge on Yusei since he stopped him from enacting his assassination attempt. Crow and Bomber then duel since Crow thinks he's the one that was responsible for the fog that absorbed the children, and there's some great character moments in this duel too. Here's a small one.
やめろクロボマよすんだお前たちが心に受けた傷は似ているだからこそお前たちはお互いのことを理解し合えるはずだボマダークシグナーになってもお前なら心の底で故郷を思っているはずだあの時共に見上げた空で俺たちが見つけようとした未来はこんな戦いだったのかボマじゃあ俺たちの怒りはどこにぶつけりゃいいんだよクロウ復讐は新たな復讐を生むだけだどうしてそれがわからない頭じゃ分かってるさでももう俺の心はどうにもならねえんだクロウ分かってくれよユウセ俺たちはもう戦わずにはいられねえんだよダッチならその目でしっかり見ててくれよ俺たちのデュエルを
The duel ends with Bomber using his Earthbound God, the Whale, or a cross between Primal Kyogre and a Shadow Pokemon. As he's about to destroy the Earthbound God, however, Crow notices Bomber's siblings inside the Whale. Bomber realizes his mistake in his petty vengeance against Yusei before the Darksider urges pull him back. I really like how the people consumed by the power of the Darksiders aren't completely mindless zombies, as all too many brainwashing tropes get. The episode ends with Bomber's people being saved while Bomber fades away into dust, much like Rally did before. Yusei makes his way to the controller. Kiryu is guarding and they duel once again. Now finally, we get to the rest of his backstory. As I said before, Kiryu is shown brutally beating a security guard, with Yusei stopping him and fighting since he wants a last duel to satisfy him since their quest to dominate Satellite is over. Yusei pins Kiryu down in the alley where he beat the officer in, and after this the security guards take him to jail since defiance against security is a first-class crime. This is despite Yusei trying to pin the blame on himself as he says he's the leader of Team Satisfaction. Kiryu sees Yusei being patted on the shoulder by the Waluigi-looking officer. Seeing this leads Kiryu to believe Yusei betrayed him. In prison, he was abused and beaten by the guards, and they took away his deck, which led him to depression, in which he starved himself so he could die. Kinda heavy stuff for a Yu-Gi-Oh show, but I love it because it just takes the story so seriously without it feeling like cartoonishly over the top. One night, a creepy voice asks what Kiryu's desire is. He says that he wants vengeance. Kiryu swore revenge on Yusei, and that'll make Yusei go through the worst fears he had to endure, all through his Earthbound God. Eventually in the duel, Kiryu loses control of his D-Wheel and Yusei tries to help him, which makes him remember the day he saved Yusei from falling from a building. Suddenly, all the Signer birthmarks begin to glow, which leads to their marks disappearing, and this also includes the one on the weird arm in the jar from the Fortune Cup finale. They form the complete Crimson Dragon mark, which allows Yusei to Synchro Summon Saber Star Dragon, which allows him to win the duel. But remember, defeating a Dark Signer causes them to disappear like Rally and Bomber before. Yusei goes to Kiryu and says he's gonna save him this time. Kiryu replies that he wasn't able to stay mad at Yusei and adds that this isn't enough to satisfy him. He turns into dust and fades away. What follows is a genuinely amazing scene, and it still gives me goosebumps even watching it and even thinking about it, scripting this. That's how good the acting and delivery of this scene is.
Kiryu, お前は俺の仲間だ。俺は仲間のため、お前のために絶対にダークシグナーを倒す。キリュ
Yusei puts his Stardust Dragon card into the controller, which leaves two more. A light appears and the people who were reserved by Kiryu's Earthbound God have returned. A spider takes control of Ushio and tells Yusei that Rudger is his next opponent. If he wants to fight him, he must come to Old Momentum. Crow thinks it could be a trap, but Yusei tells him that he must fight. As if he defeats Rudger, then Martha, Rally, and the others will return. He decides to duel Rudger. They arrive and Crow notices a tunnel and decides to check it out. Meanwhile, the others eventually stop at a bridge and Yusei sees Rudger on the other side. Rudger pulls a switch and an explosion occurs. Old Momentum's energy is under the bridge, which is basically just some rainbow light. Yusei asks if this light will take more victims, remembering what happened to Martha and Rally, and says he'll never let him get away with this. Rudger says that he'll bury Yusei inside the light as well. They then duel. Crow, who's still going through the tunnel, comes to the conclusion that it must have been an Old Momentum research laboratory. He discovers pictures of Yusei's family. Yusei's mom is kinda cute though, but back on topic. During the duel, Rudger gives the lore dump on Dr. Fudo. 17 years ago, he discovered the planetary Yusei particle. It binds particles together with other particles. Dr. Fudo gave his son the name of his discovery since he wanted Yusei to be a person that connect people with each other through bonds. Oh, that's where he got it from. The particle was essential in the creation of Old Momentum, which was intended as a non-polluting energy source, which is what the Momentum guy from the Fortune Cup was trying to make the new Momentum for, by the way. Eventually, because of the experiments, the city was struck by strange weather. Rudger is shocked when Dr. Fudo says that the experiments must be stopped. He says it's out of hand, and as long as their safety is being threatened, they can't continue to put the citizens in danger. Rudger found a location where the weird weather was also occurring, which were the Nazca lines. He went to investigate, having heard about the legend that there was a battle 5,000 years ago. During his investigation, he met a mysterious man. The man points at the birthmark on Rudger's arm, and Rudger says that's a birthmark he had ever since he was born. Yes, this does mean Rudger is the 5th signer. Rudger asks the mysterious man if the battle is going to happen again. He replies that's something he should see with his own eyes with the light of Old Momentum. He returns to Neo Domino and attempts to find the truth in what he just said, and suddenly dark purple lights strike Rudger's eyes as he sees visions about the Earthbound Gods, the Crimson Dragon, and the battle from 5,000 years ago. Crow finds Rex in a research room and asks him why he's there. He replies that he came here to say goodbye to his big brother, and he looks at the picture of him, Rudger, and Dr. Fudo. Another flashback starts. Dr. Fudo says he's going to stop the Old Momentum research no matter what the agents say to him. One of the agents tells Dr. Fudo that he is no longer has the authority to do that, and another tells him that they decide Rudger would be his successor. Dr. Fudo asks Rudger what the meaning of this is. He replies that Dr. Fudo doesn't have the courage to see the truth. Dr. Fudo replies that he already built control units to seal Old Momentum's power. When Dr. Fudo says as long as he can't release the seals, Rudger shows him the 4 cards which just so happen to be the Signer Dragon cards, which are the seal to Old Momentum's power. Dr. Fudo takes the cards away, and the agents shoot at them with their ray guns. Rex finds Dr. Fudo severely injured and tells him to hold on. Dr. Fudo tells Rex to stop Old Momentum and gives him the 3 cards that aren't Ancient Fairies since he dropped it while escaping. Rex finds his brother who cut his arm off and put it in a container, hence the weird arm in a jar. He gives it to Rex, saying that someday the signers will appear, and no matter how long it may take, he must gather them all together and defeat him. He adds that there are 2 gods within his body, but he chose the path of darkness. He tells Rex to take his arm and get away while a small amount of his self remains. He holds his brother at gunpoint, forcing Rex to do what he just said. He goes into the Old Momentum control room and hits the self-destruct button, which causes Zero Reverse, saying he will be reborn as a Dark Signer. Before the explosion to kill Dr. Fudo, he put Yusei in an escape pod, saving him from the explosion, which led to the split of the city as we know. Crow says that even the man from the legend couldn't stop the city from splitting. Rex then asks if he knows who that man was, and he replies no, but couldn't forget about his wish to make the 2 cities into one someday. Back at the duel, Yusei accuses Rudger of trying to act like a god and asks how many lives does he have to take until he's satisfied. He tells Yusei that his fate was already in the hands of the gods when he realized it, and then he chose the darkness within his heart himself. Up next is a scene I love as Yusei tells Rudger that he doesn't care about fate and that because of it, there have been so many victims. Yusei adds that Rudger has forgotten what the people who survived are going through, and if his father hadn't conducted his experiments, the incident 17 years ago would never have occurred. I'll play the clip since it genuinely made me tear up watching it the first time.
お前の運命なんて知ったことじゃない。お前は忘れている。 お前が運命と呼ぶ狂気のせいで狂わされた多くの人生があることを、残された人間がどれほど辛い目に遭ってきたかを。親父の研究がなければ17年前の事故は起きずに済んだ。あの事故がジャックやクロウの両親の命を奪った。みんなの人生をめちゃくちゃにしたんだ。あれさえなければみんな温かい両親がいて幸せな日々を送れたはずなんだ。なのにどうしてあいつらは俺を仲間と認めてくれる？何も言わずに俺に笑いかけてくれる。俺はどうしたらいい？あいつらにどうやって償えばいいんだ。
Yusei wins the duel, but despite Rudger's defeat, he tells Yusei that this isn't the end and that an ultimate god has already been unleashed. He adds that if all four of the controllers don't have their cards in by sunset, the king of the Netherworld will be revived. Rudger tells Yusei he won't allow him to leave and pulls a switch on his mechanical arm, which causes the bridge to explode, and Yusei falls into the rainbow light of old momentum. Wait, I've seen this somewhere. Yeah, the last few episodes were very exposition heavy, and I needed to summarize all that for the finale to make sense, and I'll admit I've fallen into the summary trap a bit when the story gets exposition heavy. Despite the exposition dump episodes being a bit dense, I think it ties the loose plot threads quite nicely, as it gives answers to the lingering questions that have been set up since the Fortune Cup. They've been alluded to quite well now that I'm going through all the episodes again. I love when shows do that. I felt the same way rewatching Gravity Falls when I noticed things set up way in advance. It's been a while since I've watched that show though, but I remember loving it. Since Yusei defeated Rudger, the people he took returned. Jack arrives at the controller Carly is guarding, and he wonders if Carly is there. He then remembers the good times he had with her and looks at her glasses and wonders why Carly has joined the Darksiders. She eventually arrives riding a D-wheel and tells Jack that she's been waiting for him. Jack asks her if she's really Carly, and to which she replies she is. She also adds in order to see him again, she has become a Darksider. Jack wonders what she's talking about, and she replies that she infiltrated the Arcadia movement and Divine killed her. Jack thought she was sacrificed to the Earthbound gods back in the Arcadia movement, the lizard and the bird if you don't remember. He thought that if he defeated the Darksiders, he could turn her back to normal. During the duel, Carly used the trap card Prophecy of a Future King, which blinds Jack. Back to the others, Yusei wakes up and wonders if he's actually dead. Suddenly, ghostly figures emerge from the ground, and one of them takes Yusei by the arms. He sees a vision of Zero Reverse, and he concludes that the figures are the souls of the people killed. Back to Jack, he wakes up in Carly's room as Carly tells him to wake up. Jack asks what is this place, and he notices that he has the Darksider bird mark that Carly does instead of his mark. Jack looks at himself in the mirror, and he notices he's transformed into a Darksider. When he goes outside, he notices that Satellite is turned into a literal hell. Carly tells him that the battle against the Siders was won since Jack was on their side. Because of the Darksiders' victory, the world has turned into hell itself. Jack says that death has opened his eyes and that he doesn't need friends or bonds. Carly says this is the world they truly desired. In the real world, Jack is still blinded, and Carly says that when she chose this card, she was able to understand why she became a Darksider and what she could gain by fighting Jack so that they could go to their ideal future. Back in the illusion world, Jack notices Carly's glasses and remembers Carly's true self and says this isn't the world she truly desired. Back to Yusei, the ghostly figures continue to gather around him until a voice tells them that Yusei is innocent. They then release him and disappear. Yusei then sees someone in the light who tells him that it's too soon for him to be here. Jack shows Carly her glasses and tells her to remember, saying that the real Carly is still in there somewhere. She tells Jack this is what she desires, and Jack tells her that she's wrong and she's the one who helped him move past his king persona since he was manipulated and used. Jack tells her that he hadn't forgotten what she said, and that's why he followed her advice ever since she told him that. Eventually, Carly's eyes turn back to normal, and she shows Jack that she is indeed back to normal and tells him that she doesn't really want to fight anymore, and Jack replies she's not the type of person to hurt others. Carly wants to end the duel, but the power of her Earthbound god won't allow that and forces her to continue. I love this scene since it shows despite Carly being used as a Darksider, she still has some of her humanity left. I briefly mentioned it earlier, but I like this version of a brainwashing trope since it still lets the characters have agency in the story instead of doing what the bad guys want for the sake of it. It's often used as a cheap narrative device to force conflict between characters that wouldn't usually fight. In this case, it makes the conflict much more interesting from a writing standpoint and enhances both Jack and Carly's characters. In something like, say, Sonic Lost World, the bad guys capture the brainwashed Tails into becoming a robot to serve them, when all that did really was to be a cheap plot device which ended up going nowhere for the sake of the plot working. Meanwhile here, it's less so brainwashing but more so the character's dark desires taking them over, much like Persona 4 and 5 like I said before. All these people have been corrupted by trauma and horrible events such as betrayal, revenge, and loss. These aren't horrible people that were evil by nature, but people who were flawed and or distraught that were corrupted to enact their darkest thoughts on others. That's why I like the Darksiders as characters so much. Back to the plot, the figure takes the form of his father and he apologizes, hoping that Yusei can forgive him for burdening him with such an outrageous destiny. The others suddenly see a light coming out from old momentum and notice Yusei floating within. Everyone calls for him to wake up, in which he does. yeah, he wasn't actually dead. Crow tells Yusei that they can't waste any time. Yusei agrees, and Crow says that if the two remaining controllers aren't sealed by sunset, the King of the Netherworld will revive. Back to the duel, Jack tells Carly that he did not give a second thought about others, and he would betray his friends, and that right now, he just wants to save the person he truly loves. The same thing that happened to Yusei where the complete dragon mark appeared onto him, appears on the Jack, and he uses the Synchro Summon Saver Demon's Dragon. He uses the win against the duel against Carly, but remember how the loser of a Dark Signer duel disappears? Yeah, this scene is gonna hit hard.
Kari! 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 しっかりしろ! 死ぬな!
ジャック、どこにいるの？
ここだ! ここにいるぞ!
おかしいな。何も見えない。
しっかりするんだ! 俺をよく見ろ!
私、ジャックみたいに頑張ってる人を応援するのが好きだった。なのに自分勝手な幸せを望んだりしたから、きっと罰が当たったんだね。
何を言う。誰にでも幸せを願う権利がある。それが罪だというのなら、この俺も同罪だ。
ジャック、きっと世界を救ってね。私応援しちゃうんだから。大好き、ジャック。
カーリー。
So, great scene, right? That scene hits hard since we've gotten to know Carly and how she impacted Jack and how she causes him to seek change in himself and grow as a person. Yeah, I'm gonna show a bad example on how this could have fallen on its face really easily. If you know me, I don't care for Iris and Mega Man X4, and I'll play that clip from my review of that game as to why. She's in 2 cutscenes. One, "Oh, Zero, stop fighting my brother." And then the other is her dying. I don't feel anything because it wasn't built up to. Zero and Iris' relationship wasn't expanded on, so I don't care. I should care as much as the characters do, or like make the audience care about this. But no. The reason Jack and Carly worked so well for me is because we got to know them and we were clearly shown how she meant a lot to Jack, even if I admit it was a little bit rushed and I wish it got more episodes to breathe. But the moments they do have together are well done. Iris, on the other hand, gets no screen time and has no relevance to Zero beyond Zero getting depressed for the rest of X4. I'll give them this, they used that moment for an amazing one in Zero 4. Everyone's heading for the final controller, and if it isn't sealed by sunset, the King of the Netherworld will be revived. Hold up. This is just the plot of Sonic Heroes.
Tails, how much time's left?
We've got until sunset!
Tails, Knuckles, give it all you got! Full speed ahead! Got it!
Aki goes towards the controller and Misty senses that she's finally arrived. Aki notices that a door to a hall of mirrors is opened. She goes inside while Misty's reflection is in one of the mirrors. Once inside, she says that her business with the Black Rose Witch will finally be finished, and today is the day she will take revenge for her brother's death. Outside, Yusei is searching for Aki, and he hears a voice telling him to look out and notices a giant sign following on him, and he manages to dodge it. He then notices a mysterious man who asks him if he's okay. The man claims he's from security and came here under Rex's order. Back to Aki. Misty will tell him what she did to Toby in grueling detail. She'll display Aki's crimes for her to see. Aki sees Toby give Misty a birthday present. She thanks her little brother for the present. She opened it, and her gift was some kind of locket. She thanks her brother again, and she'll be sure to treasure it. In a later flashback, Toby then tells her sister that he met someone who has psychic power similar to him, and that her name was Aki. Yusei and the mysterious man continue their search for Aki, and he tells Yusei that he saw something from in the house next to them, and Yusei goes inside. He finds Mikage below him, unconscious. He tries to save her, but is attacked by a fireball by the mysterious man. He dares Yusei to fight him if he wants to know the truth. Yusei continues the fight and asks why he doesn't want him to help Aki, and says that Aki is destined for greatness and that she doesn't need friends. The man throws Yusei into the same trap Mikage is in. He then uses another fireball to completely seal it. Yusei tries to wake her up until water began to flood where they're trapped. The man laughs at them and leaves. Back to Aki's duel, Misty then tells her that her destruction caused Toby to get crushed by a boulder. This causes Aki to feel guilty about his death and tries to tell her that it wasn't how it happened, and Misty tells her that the Arcadia movement covers up all sorts of inconvenient truths. Misty cries for her dead brother, and she drives off a cliff and dies from the fall. Yeah. Eventually, the man reveals himself to be divine. How are you even alive? You fell down a huge building. Ushio searches for Mikage and Yusei in the house, and they find him below with the water flooding where they're trapped. With the power of Ushio being a simp, he's able to free both of them. Yusei recognizes the man as divine as he demands to know his objectives. He replies that thanks to the dark Sounders, he has a scar on his face. He hopes to use Aki to get revenge against those who have hurt him. Yusei orders Divine to let her go as she's a new person. He says that Aki is his servant and he decides everything she does. What a genuine scumbag. Yusei asks him if he's the one who had caused Misty's brother's death, and he says yes, but he didn't think that things would go this far. He said it was perfect to demonstrate the psychic duelist power to the world, and Yusei says that Divine had inadvertently revealed he was behind Toby's death. He explains that he put Toby through experiments to see if he had any potential to join the Arcadia movement, in which he electrocuted the boy to death despite his colleagues telling him not to power it up too much. Yusei, being the GOAT, recorded all of this, and Misty heard of all of what Divine just admitted. Misty then sends her Earthbound God to attack him and eats him like that one Kirby boss. Yeah, he deserved more for what he did, to be honest. He'll probably be traumatized like Ushio in the original Yu-Gi-Oh!, but how about throwing him into a pit, or better yet, the Brazen Bull, where he'll slowly burn just like he slowly electrocuted poor Toby. I love when villains get exactly what they deserve. Some examples are Zero beating Weil in 04, despite it breaking the laws of robotics since he's human. Another example is in Persona 5 when Kamoshida goes to jail after the Phantom Thieves expose his crimes and him admitting all the heinous stuff he did to his students, such as abusing his male athletes and being a creep to his female students. Misty avenges Toby's death and understands that Aki hadn't killed her brother. Misty says she has no reason to fight Aki at this point, but is forced to continue much like Harley was. Aki does win the duel, but she's not in the mood to celebrate with the others. She notices Misty's locket and looks at the picture of Misty and Toby as her tears fall onto it. Unfortunately, they didn't make the deadline for the last controller. An earthquake occurs and a light appears. A condor appears in the sky, signaling that there may be another Darksigner. This sets the stage for the finale. Since they failed to seal the controllers, the King of the Netherworld is revived, and it takes the form of a sludge dragon. The Crimson Dragon then transports everyone to Rex's house. Rex congratulates the signers for defeating the Darksiders, and Yusei asks why the King of the Netherworld is coming here, and he tells Yusei that the stairway is the place for the divine ritual. He's used the Crimson Dragon to bring the signers here for the sake of the ritual. Rex picks up the container that is Rutger's arm, and Jack remembers learning that Rex is a mechanical left arm and asks if the arm in the container is his. He replies that the arm belonged to his brother, prompting Yusei to ask why he has it. Rex then turns around, and yep, he's a Darksigner. The Condor to be exact, although he wasn't always one, as I'll get into shortly. Also, this has been foreshadowed since he first appeared. The Condor is literally on his shirt. Nice attention to detail, by the way. Also, his last name is Godwin, so there's that too. He then rips off his mechanical arm to put on his brother's arm, like it's the anchor arms for SpongeBob. Yusei then asks Rex what he's trying to do, and he replies that he will become the ultimate god by using both the powers of the Crimson Dragon and the Earthbound God. Yup, another villain with a god complex. An altar appears, and Rex announces that the ritual shall be done via a riding duel. He intends to defeat and sacrifice the signers to the King of the Netherworld. Yusei, Jack, and Crow all accept it as a 3v1 for the finale. Not going to go into the final duel in depth since this review is getting long enough, but I'll give my general thoughts on the last bit of plot needed. The duel's honestly great, lots of great character moments where all three of their arcs come full circle with Jack's king persona and how far he's come, and how Rex uses it to justify his god complex, Yusei's bonds as per usual, and Crow's resolve to be like the legendary man. It's honestly great stuff. The music in this duel is sweeping like a JRPG final boss, and it sends off the arc in a fantastic way. Rex actually wasn't a Darksigner all this time, but when he and his brother dueled back when Yusei and the others went to face Rutger the second time, Rex lost a duel against his brother, and his brother turned him into a Darksigner. Rex wants the powers of the King of the Netherworld to destroy the world and rebuild it using the Crimson Dragon's power. Cyrus from Pokemon Platinum much? Rex says how it's an unforgivable offense to retaliate against the god, and that the man from the legend learned this by losing his left arm. Yusei asks him if he's the legendary man. Rex replies that the legendary man failed as he couldn't go against destiny because he was a normal person and a useless human. In order to change fate, one must surpass human to become a god. Yes, the legendary man is indeed Rex. That's how he lost his arm. Eventually, Rex summons his Earthbound God, the Condor, and the people of Neo Domino get sacrificed. The duel goes on despite Jack and Crow being out of commission due to the Earthbound God's attack, so it's just Yusei left, and he asks Rex if he really wants to become a god. He tells Yusei that he cannot become a god unless he surpasses his brother. Yusei tells him he's wrong since people think they can never forget, and Yusei thinks back to his father. Yusei says that it's in their hearts and that Rutger is in Rex's heart. Yusei tells him that Rex isn't trying to surpass fate but go against it with Rutger, asking him, isn't that what we call a bond? The Crimson Dragon birth suddenly leaves Rex's chest, and Yusei's birthmark then disappears from his arm and is replaced by the dragon head birthmark. The dragon tail that Yusei had appears on Crow's arm, by the way. Rex is shocked and asks why the Crimson Dragon isn't lending him the power to be a god. and Yusei tells them the Crimson Dragon has chosen bonds and that their bonds will surpass fate. Yusei then defeats the King of the Netherworld and Rex enters on God with help from the Crimson Dragon. Before the final attack can land though, Yusei is transported to another dimension. Yusei awakens to find all the Darksiders except Carly unconscious on the ground. Rex and Rudger appear before Yusei, and Rex tells Rudger that they've chosen the wrong path, and without Yusei they never would have realized it. He tells Yusei that the mean of fighting against fate is bonds, and asks Yusei to take care of all of those who were Darksiders. Since they became Darksiders by choice, Rex and Rudger get no second chance, and Rudger agrees. They both begin to walk toward a bright light. What is this? The Mario Galaxy ending? Yeah, it kinda is. The Crimson Dragon follows through on its attack, and the day is saved. The King and Condor are gone. With the Darksiders defeated, Neo Domino City returns to normal and everyone goes back to their normal lives. Back at Satellite, Yusei, Jack, and Crow stand at the completed bridge with both cities finally reunited just as Rex promised. They all race down the bridge, riding towards their new future they helped create, and Yusei yells out, "Riding duel? Acceleration." Like, wow. This arc is nearly perfection. Only things I wish we had were a few more episodes of lighthearted fun, since it genuinely took a lot out of me watching this arc and I had to take breaks, but it's an amazing arc that followed up on and expanded what came before. I'll briefly touch on the special OVA. It's nothing special, to be honest. It's just a glorified ad for the new card set at the time, the Crimson Crisis set. It's an alternate non-canon take on the Fortune Cup finale where Yusei and Jack show off some of their new cards, but if you like the dueling, then I'd give it a watch even if it's non-canon. The manga is also interesting since it's a completely different story to the anime. I've read the first few chapters and an interesting alternate version of the show. Now for the conclusion. As I said in the title, 5D's is peak. Great characters, stakes that escalate and feel earned, and a story that feels so purposely built that I feel the show could have ended here. Yeah, I only reviewed the first 64 episodes out of 154. I'll maybe cover the post-Darksiders half, but I don't plan on it. This video got delayed and almost cancelled a few times due to multiple factors such as me deleting half my editing timeline and having to remake it, lack of motivation in the multiple attempts making this video, and other factors I won't go into in the video. I'm just glad I could get the video done. I'm hoping you really enjoyed my long review on a show I really like. Next time I'll most likely review something shorter. Until then, see you all next review.